next year will come with most countries and more better results on the brain action plans.
Yes, completely.
Thank you, Pavel. Okay, we have 1 hour of session on brain skills. I hope you can join us for this. We have some colleagues online. I would like to call for Michael Platt to join me, and then Tim Foxx, please. So we had a very long day, and I feel the jet lag now since I came yesterday from Europe. And I have my colleagues connected online. I hope we can see them on screen. And they are connected from Europe and from, I don't know, Funsho. He is in Kenya, or he's in
Nairobi.
Ghana.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Cinzia, here. It's 11:20 in Brussels, 11:20 in Barcelona, and I don't know, for Funsho, it's what time there. So thank you very much for waiting from where you are. So our session, it's quite provocative, in fact, because it's quite linking two things, which is brain skills. Brain skills is the second pillar of brain capital. So this is the definition we have designed together over 4 years in a working group between neuroscientists, psychiatrists, and economists, and other policy analysts. So we try to agree on a definition that we all feel comfortable with. Now, of course, brain health, it's not only the absence of disorders, it's also the skills that we infuse to our brain from the day we are born. And then we continue with, hopefully, the long life learning beyond the primary, secondary, and tertiary education. Obviously, we are living in a digital transition with AI augmented realities and environments. And we can see that a lot of our skills that are eventually taken over or not by artificial intelligence, which are, in fact, we can see it, in fact, in the workplace to a certain extent. And I think we practically need to adapt, maybe adopt first, and then adapt to the change of this transition. So how can we move within this transformation without really being hurt and increasing stress in the workplace, but also in our life space overall, not only on the workplace, because in reality, work, it's part of our life, and then this will also allow us to live differently, eventually increase our productivity when adopting for artificial intelligence, but then at the same time rethinking our brain skills. And then based on the work that we've been doing, brain skills go beyond the cognitive skills. We're talking also about cognitive skills, non-cognitive skills, emotional skills. One of them is creativity, and I am very happy to have Janine here, and she is working on creativity, and she has given me these 2 books, very interesting. I Am Creative, I mean, with her son, in fact, working on this. And this is essential to ensure that we are recognizing the creativity as a brain skills from the day we are born, in fact. And this will develop over the lifespan. At the same time, resilience, also adherence. Adherence overall, it's an essential skill that eventually we need to harness all our lives. So I would like to start with the speakers that I have here with us. Here, Michael and Tim, if you could present yourself for 1 minute and then really give us your view about this topic from your own perspective. And I want to say one word about Michael, that he has a great book, and I haven't read it yet. I bought it, and I will let you know.
How do you know it's good?
Yes, because I read the synopsis.
I can confirm that it's good.
The synopsis was really interesting because he really tried to, I mean, I'm going to read it, and I am very curious about the brain leaders. So this is interesting, especially in nowadays environment. So, Michael.
Thank you. And boy, this is an easy topic to tackle. So I'm going to put on my other hat now. So not school of medicine hat, but Wharton hat as Wharton Neuroscience Initiative Director. So I founded Wharton Neuroscience in 2017. So it's kind of early to be out there. And it's really the first, and I think still the most comprehensive and ambitious attempt to put neuroscience squarely at the center of business education practice. So we begin from the premise that business runs on brains and society runs on brains. And if so, then we can take the insights, the technology, the analytics from neuroscience and apply those to all domains of business to make business more efficient, more effective, and more humane. And I really stress that last part. And I think that if we get all of that right, we make society better too. Okay, so that is our mission. Wharton Neuroscience stands on 3 pillars, which is research, so answering the big questions, demonstrating the value and that it works. Education, we have a curriculum for undergraduates, for MBA students, and for executives. We've trained thousands at this point over the last 7 years who are out there in the world. They're now savvy consumers, investors, users of neuroscience, not necessarily neuroscientists themselves, but able to make good decisions about it and with it. And then engagement. So we engage with companies, with NGOs, with governments to answer some of their biggest challenges by applying neuroscience. And really our goal there is to demonstrate that it works out there in the world and that it delivers value for you. So it can be fine. It's super interesting. They're like, oh yeah, this is a fun thing. This is so interesting about the way your brain works. But who cares? Because either it doesn't scale, it's not practical, we don't understand it, or when we use it, it doesn't make a difference. So that's what we do.
Thank you. Michael, I have also Cinzia here.
Oh, I thought Tim was going to introduce himself.
Yes, let me start with Cinzia, and then I go back to you. Cinzia, if you can introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Very pleased to be part of this panel. So I'm Cinzia Alcidi. I'm a senior research fellow at CEPS, the Center for European Policy Studies. We are a think tank based in Brussels, one of the largest and the oldest think tanks. I'm an economist by training. And in the last 5 years, I've been leading the research activities of CEPS in the area of labor market and social policies. And basically about a year ago, we set up a research program on future work. So the beauty of future work is that it doesn't exist. So we need to create it. We need to shape it. And this is basically what we are doing at the moment, and I'll be happy to share some insights about our current research. Thank you.
Tim?
Good evening, everybody. I am Tim Foxx. I am fortunate to serve as the director of the Center for School Study Councils at the University of Pennsylvania. Our center sits in the Graduate School of Education, and I am here today because I got connected with Dr. Platt and Harris and sat in a session similar to this on our campus, facilitated by the Wharton Neuroscience Initiative. And when I did a scope of the room, I was the only person in the room representing K-12. And I was stunned because the content was critically relevant to the audiences that I serve. And yet the audience did not contain anybody that I serve. And so the honor and privilege of being here today is because, one, I'm learning, but two, I'm representing thousands of system leaders across the country, superintendents and other leaders, and millions of children. And so I look forward to our exchange during this panel. And thank you, Rem.
Marta? You need to unmute. We don't hear you. Marta, can you speak? No.
Mute now?
Now, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me today. Let me introduce myself first. I'm Marta Sanchez-Bret. I'm biochemist, MBA professional as well. I have worked in Spain and abroad during the whole of my professional life. I've run more than 20 years of executive sectorial experience in different sectors. And since the last 10 years, I am leading public and private initiatives within the health sector as cluster director for WeMind Cluster. I'm here today because I think I'm passionate about technology and value creation. When we first launched the mental health cluster in Catalonia in 2013, that was the first initiative brought from economic policies as a part of the Catalan regional government for cluster programs, but starting with mental health. And since then, we have been developing the number of the associates that has been joining us this exceptional ecosystem where mental health, aging, and neuroscience meet. We have been developing workshops, events, and for sure collaborative projects. So we are open to show that open innovation activities can be successfully deployed within a cluster, that living lab activities with the people, the users, and the real needs can be taken into consideration. And it's for us an opportunity to join this initiative, this regional initiative, so that companies, institutions can really improve their productivity and make direct impact on people's mental health across lifespan. So that's a wider perimeter. So happy to be here today. It's an honor and privilege as well to be a small regional example of what we are doing in cluster policies in Catalonia. Thank you.
Casted on screen. Okay. Yes, here you go. Funsho, hi. Do you hear us?
Hi, can everybody hear me clearly?
Yes, perfect. So can you introduce yourself and then explain a little bit your interest in this topic overall?
Absolutely. My name is Funsho Allu, one of the founding partners of TIA Capital. We're a Pan-African investment firm, mostly deploying capital for a big American investment vehicle out of San Francisco. Almost $1 billion invested across the continent, across a whole bunch of different sectors and 14 different countries. Historically have focused on credit, but increasingly these days a bit more on equity investing. In the last few years, I've been looking pretty seriously at the educational space, which is where the overlap with AI and training sort of comes into play. I advise a UK company called NetScholar, which is a fledgling sort of educational technology business looking at ways to leverage technology to bring education from the UK across into Africa. And that's one of the reasons why the intellectual overlap brought me here and brought me into RIM's orbit. Pleasure to be here. I'm calling in from Nairobi. Looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Funsho. So I'm back to the room, to Michael. So given the progress in neuroscience and cognitive psychology, what are the approaches that you can share with us to optimize brain skills in the workplace? And particularly you can talk about the skills of the brain leaders.
Okay, well, thanks. This is a big question, and we are at the really beginnings, just on the cusp of this, and thinking of this in the context of AI, where this artificial intelligence is invading our workplaces, invading our lives. I mean, primitive artificial intelligence has already been there in the form of social media, and we didn't quite get that right. Okay, so I think we need to do a better job this time around to understand the potential impacts and role of AI. I think it's instructive to start by understanding natural intelligence, our brains, right? And what's similar and what's different, and where do we have an advantage, and how do we center and advantage humans and human values in that context. So much is made of the analogy or this idea, this metaphor of the brain as a computer, and that's really not a very good metaphor. Okay, although there are similarities in the way that AI code is written in terms of how the fundamental routines and algorithms in the human brain as we understand them, but in other ways it's completely different. Right? So the human brain is much more like a Swiss Army knife than a computer. You have a number of different tools in that Swiss Army knife that solve specific functions, that support specific functions, that solve specific tasks. So you might have a knife and a screwdriver and a corkscrew, really important one, etc. And you have to keep those tools sharp. Okay? If they don't stay sharp, they can't do their job properly. And those tools are the things that are, one of those is, of course, cognition or our IQ. But those other tools are our emotional intelligence, our social intelligence, what I talked about a little bit this morning, our creativity, which came up, our curiosity, our resilience. These are all our decision-making capabilities. These are all critical for performance, for leadership, and ultimately for, I believe, economic security, vitality, and human well-being. And one of the, getting back to Wharton Neuroscience, one of our premises is that we can use the tools of neuroscience to shine a spotlight on those tools much more clearly and more effectively, to know what they are, to measure their state, how sharp or dull are they, right? How ready are they to serve their job? And once knowing that, how can we tune those tools up so that they do their job better? So what we do is we use the suite of neurotechnologies running from brain imaging to high throughput physiological biometric measurements, including electroencephalograms, EEG, and then ultimately wearables that we can deploy in real world environments to try to understand at a super deep level what's going on in a person's head, to measure those tools for each individual. And so we know what they look like in the average person, and we know what accounts for differences between people, like why one person's knife is a little sharper and another person's screwdriver is a little bit more powerful. It has more torque on it, okay? And so what we then do is we use that suite of tools as well as behavioral techniques to make those measurements in people, right? So we're not relying on, frankly, outdated and completely unreliable technology that involves asking people, hey, how good is your corkscrew? How good is your social intelligence? How creative are you? Those are questions that people either don't have good insight into, or the very act of you asking them a question biases what they say, and the context in which, if you've ever done a personality test to get a job, you know exactly what I'm talking, or you're a recruiter and you face the same thing. So we use this as a way to get an unbiased, scientific, objective measurements on individuals to know what their talent, strengths, and motivators are, and then from that foundation understand what kinds of training development will help them to reach their full potential, and then to align that potential with the task, with the job that they do, and then once they're in it, to help them keep improving and keep advancing. And just as much as we do that for individuals, we do that for teams. And that's a much more complex equation, because the composition of a team, the dynamics of that team, the diversity of that team will matter depending on what they need to do. Do they need to solve an unknown problem, come up with new ideas and solutions, or do they need to execute on something that we already have the solution? Right? So those are the sort of, that's really the ethos that we bring here. And also mindful of the fact that if you are suffering from anxiety, depression, burnout in the workplace, right, this means that those tools are just not going to function very well. And so if you're a leader, if you're a business leader, you should care about people reaching their potential. But even if you don't, you care about the bottom line. Right? And if people are not, if there's not good alignment between their talents, strengths, and motivators and what they do, if they're not keeping those tools sharp, right? If the team dynamics are crap, then that bottom line is compromised. People aren't going to be productive, they're not going to be creative, they're not going to be innovative, right? And so we believe this is an equation to, like I said earlier, make business more efficient, more effective, and more humane. And we do that through work with companies, as I mentioned. So we've done some really cool work with a big management consulting company called Slalom, where we measure brain activity, behavior, other voice, et cetera, in the workplace to characterize team dynamics, interpersonal interactions, creativity, while people are working online. This is something prior to 2020 that most of us never did. And we discovered that, in fact, there are certain things you can do to make that go better, like take breaks between meetings. Simple. You should make it the default, by the way, take that home. Don't run meetings back to back because your brain needs a reset, okay? That aspects of interpersonal resonance, synchrony that I talked about earlier, that occur in the real world when people are together, actually occur between people who have only worked together online, and that predicts their working relationship with downstream spillover, right, into their productivity. So these are the kinds of things that we are discovering. We're working, the idea, the question of light came up earlier, which I loved hearing about. One of our big projects right now is, again, in the workplace, using neuroscience-grounded measures of chronotype. That is, are you a night owl, a morning lark, or something in between? Where you are on that, your chronotype strongly shapes how you see the world. You remember the blue dress, gold dress thing that everybody was freaking out about? Like, because it was like, how could you see it that way? It's not, you know, and it turns out that depends on your chronotype. People who are morning people, who are used to sunlight, see it one way. People who are night owls, who work under indoor illumination, see it completely differently. Their brain incorporates those statistics into their perception of the world. We're now seeing how that affects, say, team dynamics and creativity in the workplace, okay? And we're just launching now a multi-year project with Deloitte, specifically targeting the question of neurodiversity, so celebrating, recognizing the fact that people differ in all these talents, strengths, and motivators, and how to create and strategically engage that diversity in an inclusive way so that a big ship like Deloitte can actually turn on a dime given the, how dynamically the world is changing. And a big part of that, too, if you're interested, is the mental health aspects, because we know from really great data from our colleague Michael Freeman out at UCSF and our partner in a study of entrepreneurs, where we now know that entrepreneurs are touched by fires, so they are extremely high in creativity, but 2 to 3 times more likely than the general population to suffer from dyslexia, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, bipolar, anxiety disorder, and the list is kind of freakishly long. What we're trying to do now is and we validated an instrument for measuring this in entrepreneurs, in founders, and then where we detect potential issues, provide a suite of support tools. And if we do that, like these are the, founders, small businesses are the drivers of the economy. If we do that right, that is to everyone's benefit. So I'll leave it at that.
Michael, thank you. Based on your research, what you mentioned is you are also tracking the behavior of the people working, and based on the type of skills they develop over time. So it's not only one observation, so it's over time. So
Yeah, but this is, I will say that this is early on, so that is the promise. So we're actively engaged in those measurements. Yeah.
And my second question, because we are doing some work on adherence, and adherence is also, I think we need to do more research on that, could be perceived as a brain skill, because practically it involves self-regulation, impulse control, goal setting and planning, and these are all aspects that are needed in the workplace. And applying to, just because we heard many times today, physical exercise. Besides good diet, physical exercise, you can move. You said it, we can take a break, but not to go lay down on a couch, but rather to move or to walk, as was said before. So we did some research to link adherence to physical exercise in the workplace and overall. But of course, this is not really part of a policy of companies or even in the schools. Maybe in the schools a bit more, but not as much. And Tim can tell us a little bit about it later on. So how do you see this in the work you're doing there from a neuroscience perspective?
Well, I mean, you're absolutely right. If there's one thing, again, a take-home message any of you can do to keep your brain healthy and alive and stave off dementia, physical exercise is the most important. Social exercise is its perfect complement. One of the virtues of being at Wharton is we get access to, leaders across the world. There are 110,000 living alumni of Wharton. They tend to be, in many of them, in positions that give them power and control. So when I make that business case for them, and I say, look, you should be, don't focus on squeezing every ounce of effort out of each person during the day, but rather build in opportunities to exercise, to move, to walk, to socialize. That will return benefits to your company, right? And so then we show that data, and I would love to see your data because that sounds awesome. And that, they believe it, but you gotta take them on that journey from here's the observation, here's the business case, here's the human case, here's the science. It's as real. That's the thing. It's like if I show them it's real, if I show them a light on a brain, they're more likely to believe it. Even though you don't necessarily need that picture of a light on a brain. And once they see that, then they say, okay, then I will invest my time, energy, and money in that because it's real.
Thank you. We'll share the data as soon as we have it. So let me turn to Cinzia. At CEPS, you have a project which is trying to see the impact of AI and which are the digital skills that one has to have to adapt to this AI new environment of work. So what are your first input on this research, and how do you see the future for from a brain skill perspective? And of course, you know a bit what we're doing on this brain capital, so you could eventually connect to that.
Thank you very much, Raymond. It's the start has been extremely exciting. So I also hope I can bring my 2 cents to this super interesting conversation. I have just 2 slides. Can you see my slides? Can you see my screen? Okay, so as I was saying earlier, what we have been doing in the last year is basically to develop a research program focusing on the future of work, trying to understand basically how the digital transformation, our technology is impacting labor. And when we speak about digital transformation, our main focus is on artificial intelligence. And basically, since the start, we try to come up with a sort of analytical framework, simple analytical framework, in trying to identify actually the ways in which artificial intelligence affects labor, because this is very complex and it's actually quite easy to get lost and losing track of the different drivers and then transmission mechanisms. And the framework that we're using is quite simple. We focus on quantity, quality, and design. And our main unit, at least in the framework, is jobs. So we're interested in seeing how artificial intelligence is affecting employment, so quantity of jobs, quality jobs, and job design. And for each of these elements, actually, there are huge questions out there which are relevant from an economic perspective, but also from a societal perspective, probably neuroscience perspective, and many others. And I'm not going to dig into all the specific questions, but basically, just to give you an example, when it comes to quantity, the really big unknown is how many jobs AI is going to destroy and how many is going to create. And there are out there quite a lot of estimates speaking about millions of jobs created and jobs destroyed. But in practice, these estimates are based on a lot of assumptions, and we really do not know how realistic they are. But we know some things. We are learning some things. And for instance, the first one is, and this is something that would qualify as known, is that jobs will be transformed. So we don't know whether some will be disappearing and how many will be disappearing, but certainly they will be transforming, because artificial intelligence is typically replacing or enhancing tasks. And basically bundles of tasks define jobs. So whenever there is a replacement or enhancement, you have a change in jobs. The second aspect, which is what we call the job quality, in practice embeds the question of whether and how AI is enhancing or jeopardizing good jobs. Now, the concept of a good job is very wide, and there is no full agreement on how to qualify a good job. But what we can say, and where there is a minimum agreement, is that good jobs are usually qualified by wages, but also by working and employment conditions, which very often are defined by industrial relations. And here they could, an important point, which I think relates very much to the discussion which was made earlier in previous sessions, but also in the first intervention, is that a lot in the end is about well-being at work and in the workplace, which is also affected by elements like attachment to work, motivation to work, and meaningfulness of jobs and work. So aspects which sometimes it's very difficult to quantify from an economic point of view, but which are extremely important from the perspective of the worker, but also from the company, because all these elements actually ultimately contribute to productivity. And the third aspect is really job design. And this is something that is, it's a challenge which is present for companies, and a challenge that many companies, especially large companies, are trying to address. And what they're doing are basically reassessing the tasks that define jobs and identify what can be done by machines and what can be done by humans. This in practice implies that jobs and profiles for posts need to be redesigned in order really to have a matching between tasks and skills, and try to understand how the machine and the human can interact and be complementary. Now, in this scheme, which is quite complex, one sort of common denominator or unit of analysis which is relevant for all these three dimensions is basically skills. And this is basically the one of the main focus of our analysis. And when it comes to skills, basically we try to address three main questions: skills for whom, which skills, and how the skills actually can be delivered, how we make sure that people get the skills. And in skills for whom our focus is essentially on adults. So this, we know that this is not comprehensive, so skills is not something that is only for adults, but we decided to focus on adults basically for 4 big reasons. The first one is really that the digital transformation, not only artificial intelligence, and green transformations basically are affecting a lot of people who are on the jobs, so working age population. We are observing trends which point to the end of job for life. So until a few years ago, many individuals actually had only one job for their entire life. Now what we are observing, and this is quite pronounced, especially in the United States, is a falling in job tenure, especially for the youngsters. So there is much more a change of jobs in careers. And basically all these elements, whether this is the green and digital transformation, whether that is change of jobs, this requires essentially new skills. So typically upskilling or reskilling. Third point, we know this was mentioned earlier about the role of small enterprises. In small enterprises, usually there are higher structural barriers to training and learning. In Europe, we have some 23 million companies which have less than 50 employees, and in such small companies, access to training is very limited, much more limited than in large companies. And then last but not least, we need to recognize that there is a higher psychological barrier to learning for adults than for young people. The answer, I don't need to learn, I know my job, I don't need trainings, is in fact quite a widespread approach. Second pillar is which skills, and this is a quite fundamental question. And here, this is an area where we are doing a lot of work. What we call skills intelligence actually can help a lot. And then skills intelligence is basically really strategic use of data around workers' ability to perform tasks. This entails collection of data, analysis of data, and ultimately an attempt to understand the future, to forecast the future, in particular future needs for skills. This is an area in which there is a lot of progress. There are still some open issues because, for instance, we do not have a single taxonomy of skills. We have been speaking about skills for quite some time, but I'm sure if I ask a question, if you give me examples of skills, actually this could go in many directions because we have thousands of skills and different taxonomies to identify skills. Then the issue of the data sources. What we are looking at now, what we are doing a lot is to look at vacancy data, because we have real-time data on how the demand for skills is evolving. And then, as I said, ultimately what we would like to do is to basically being able to forecast what is the needs for skills in certain sectors, in certain regions, countries, and for certain companies. And this is the most difficult exercise, and really needs to be taken with pinch of salt what is out in terms of forecast. With all this uncertainty, however, that there are some quite clear trends. We have an increasing demand for technical specialized skills, for instance, data science, data visualization, and similar. Increased demand for transversal skills, for example, problem solving, team working, that was mentioned earlier, and really above all, what we call human skills. So those skills which basically cannot be taken over by machine because they cannot be routinized and automatized. And this is, for instance, creativity, but also empathy. And then our last pillar, we are a think tank, we are very much focused on policy. So then the one very fundamental question is there room for policy, or is it just an issue for workers and for companies? And here, the key point, what we are observing is that when we speak about skills, we really need to look at 3 different levels. So individuals, companies, because there is a strong economic dimension, but also governments. And the very fundamental starting point is that we need to look at people, we need to look at labor as capital. You speak about brain capital. Here we focus very much on labor, but one of the main features of labor is having a brain. So I think here that there is a very strong connection. And the 3 elements I think are crucial. This is what drives ultimately a company's competitiveness. So the economic argument is really strong. We need to recognize, exactly because it's capital, that it can become obsolete, and therefore it requires investment. And one of the key solutions, if you want to go towards this approach, is to embrace what we call lifelong learning. So learning is a process, is something that continues and needs to be fed over time. And then 2 other elements. We spoke about leaders. In our research, we are focusing a lot on managers. Managers are leaders in companies. And their role is crucial because basically they define organizations as a bundle of people. So who is going to work in the organization and how people interact. They define the strategies that are associated with the organization, but they also identify the jobs and the tasks that needs to be performed, but they're also responsible for training, for giving budgets to people to train. So from this perspective, actually, managers can play a critical role. And then my last point is really on whether there is need for governments to intervene. And in this area, that there are market failures. There are situations in which the supply of skills is provided by the private sector is going to be insufficient. And it is for governments to intervene to fill the gap and make sure that overall countries are endowed with a skilled workforce. I will stop it here. Thank you very much.
So, Cinzia, if we can see you, that would be great on the screen, because we don't see you, we see the slide.
Yep.
One question, did you think of including in your project a neuroscience perspective?
We haven't done it until now, but I have to say that while I was listening, quite a few ideas came to my mind. What we are doing now, we're trying to embed more sociological elements related to organization as a structure and how they are defined, and as an environment where people interact. So the element of science is not involved, not yet, but it's would certainly be easier actually to make connections.
Perfect. Thank you, Cinzia. I would like to turn to Tim. You mentioned the K-12 school, and then how do you see digital skills interacting, and how do you see this really a preparation for brain skills for the new age, for the children?
Sure. So I want you all to walk with me for a minute, and I want you to think about the year 2037. The year 2037. So in the United States, August or September kicked off the school year, and every child that was going into kindergarten will graduate in 2037. So the question is, what skills will they need to be able to function in a global economy when they graduate? And what skills do their teachers need so that they can prepare young people to transition into a global economy? One of the benefits of being at the University of Pennsylvania is being connected to individuals like Dr. Platt. and being able to curate content for system leaders across the country. And so Michael and Zab have come in and they've done some training with our system leaders, adults, about the leader's brain and about how they think and how they decision make. And within that are embedded opportunities for them to think about, meaning our system leaders to think about how their audience thinks. Their audience is actually their workforce. And if their workforce is not prepared, then they won't be able to prepare young people to transition into a global brain economy. So the relevancy of the content that was expressed today across all of the panels that I was fortunate to listen to, as well as the overall thematical effort here, is really about preparing a society that our current youth can transition to in a healthy way. Skilling them up to be able to do so is going to require some intentionality. It's going to require us recognizing how we design schools, how we design their experiences. I will tell you that at one point in my career, serving children on the front line, I went to some work that was being done at the University of Kentucky because a large number of young people in the schools that I was serving were dealing with ADD and ADHD. And at University of Kentucky, they had developed a correlation between kinesiology and executive function. And the clear-cut thing was a bout of activity. They called it a bout of activity would allow young people to exercise executive function and overcome some of the challenges that they had as a result of ADD or ADHD. Well, I saw that work in real time. And when I saw it work in real time, I was nowhere near working with this gentleman at UPenn. But now I'm here, and I'm in this space, able to synergize understanding that I have from empirical evidence, along with research that's being done, that not only do we have to prepare young people, but we have to prepare the people who are preparing young people. And so this twofold effort for me is about upskilling educators and giving them the proper agency to facilitate this change while demystifying AI as a culprit. If AI is viewed as a villain, then we won't be able to skill up young people so that they can immerse themselves in a global economy and have a healthy brain approach to work. One of the quotes that I sit with is where you set your mind will determine your mindset. If you set your mind in the deficit, you will always be a deficit thinker. If you set your mind in the possibility, you'll be able to generate some tangible, sustainable transformation. And so for me, setting my mind on young people and the individuals that support them and train them allows my mindset to not be trapped or paralyzed by the moment. We can't be trapped or paralyzed by the moment because the moment may give us an indicator of gloom and doom. The however is, if we're forward focused, we can bring intentionality into training and development of skills that not only give young people an opportunity to transition into the economy, but transition into it well from a brain health perspective. My last thing is, the gentleman from India talked about the increased incidence in suicide in a particular age range. As he spoke, I thought about the reality of that being so much more prevalent in the United States as well. And a lot of it is going to be tied to algorithmic digital literacy, right? And subsequently, the need for algorithmic health. I don't want to introduce a new topic that could throw people for a loop, but algorithmic literacy and algorithmic health are of the essence. And if we don't pay attention to it, it will continue to increase the amount of mental health challenges that you're seeing in generations to come.
That's clear. Thank you, Tim. I think we will not wait to 2037. I think we need to act from yesterday, and I think this hasn't happened. So let me turn to Marta. I see my colleagues in Europe almost falling asleep. Marta, we have talked about the care economy. We also have talked about how in Europe there is an aging population. There is also huge dependency risk on the outset. So how do you see this from wherever you're positioned from a WeMind cluster? And what is your recommendation? So please keep it short. I know that it's 12:30, almost there now, 12:13. So please.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I'll try to be short because there are so many ideas and such a big bunch of data being shown today, so that most of the topics has been covered, I would say. The only thing that I would emphasize is we as a cluster, we are a non-profit organization. Let me maybe just go ahead with a couple of slides, very easy. Can you see my slide? No?
Because we have some issues when we broadcast the slides from here. Now, yes. Now, yes.
Yeah?
Perfect, yes.
So very, very quickly. We are a non-profit organization. We were created, as I said, 10 years before, in 2013. We started working on mental health because mental health was a topic that was not being approached from competitiveness, from developing innovation, transactional opportunities from research. And we are now focusing in personal autonomy, gathering together aging and neuroscience perspective. So we cover from a user-centric perspective the promotion, the prevention, the diagnosis, the treatment, the social inclusion and labor inclusion as well, when it's possible, or through lifespan of a person. So we, for sure, took a deep look into the care, into the care cost, in the cost effectiveness, because the main motivation behind cluster, as mentioned before, is fostering this innovation to strengthen the competitive, and mainly in SMEs, as Cinzia mentioned before as well, because they are the main type of companies here in Europe. So therefore, we have daily limitations to promote this space of innovation, and that's why we started as well trying to innovate through technology. Our focus was in care, trying to foster this strategic change among these SMEs companies, bringing the innovation from research, from a startup, from technology transfer to these companies through mainly collaborative projects, public and private managed. To do that, we use these 4 levers. So we go international, we create these innovations through projects, and we develop as well, as in this panel we have been discussing, this Mind Excellence campus, due to the fact that we thought that learning and talent development it's a key point for professionals to be on the right skill set, to be on top of their main skill sets on mental health not only at their jobs, but as well as in terms of well-being. We have as well proposed our share value. So our share value initiatives are aligned with the main transformative journey that you have been showing tonight. Well, I said tonight because here is already. So for us, what does it mean to work with these SMEs through share value and common good economy? So it means that we do need a strategic and management alignment of organizations to generate this social environment and economic value for all stakeholders as in our value chain. Clusters are open innovation ecosystems, so we work transversally. We do take studies of all these data of policies and public junctions to work bridge both to bring this possibility to try to work effectively and on cost reduction and on giving the best biopsychosocial environment for all of those who had or have affections on their central nervous system, which would be the whole perimeter of our neuromental health and longevity aspects that we work with, and focusing much more on these final results that we try to find out. So identifying these opportunities through these studies, we try to reinforce this responsibility for social corporates and sustainability culture. Sorry, and trying to as well train the workforce, the task force, in measuring social and environmental outcomes. So to do all this transversal approach through innovation to product, to process services development that brings the best scenario to users and patients and society. What we go for is for the care, and we try to develop partnerships among the different entities that work in this cluster ecosystem, always with the support with the public programs and private as well funds. So as part of some of this care that we notice that it's relevant, this long-term care in facing these demographic challenges that we are all globally having. We develop, for example, some projects related to robotics assistances. We are working with care and assistance in the 21st century, trying to develop these new housing models where at certain levels of impairment, people can stay at home so that they can be supported by technology. And we use one as example, some robotic of this.
Marta, could you please summarize, because we need to close. Yeah, if
sure.
You could please. Because we still have Funsho. It's 1 a.m., 1:20 a.m. for him from Nairobi. Okay. And for you, it's midnight.
Yes, I know. Sorry, I'll try to finalize. Just mentioning another example of these care projects that we are bringing all together. It's immersive virtual reality, trying to develop applications that helps the elderly, the families, but as well the professionals with different dysfunctions or impairment, so that we can try to find out other solutions in technology and support. I'll stop here so that Funsho can.
Thank you very much. But for sure, we'll have other opportunities to go further. But what is important in the cluster run by Marta is that brain skills in the care economy is something that they are working on. They're integrating artificial intelligence, and this is great to work in a multi-stakeholder approach. This is a very nice example in Catalonia that could also be used in other countries, in other areas where brain health has been centric. And now brain skills, it's also part of it, slowly, via the care economy. But I think this integrated approach overall, it's what we need to enhance or to move into a brain positive economy. Funsho, to you, I'm really sorry. I know it's 1 a.m. there. You are awake. I see that you're tired. So please, your view, as we talked, how technology is really rapidly changing the education from the edutech perspective, and how do you see also funding perspective there?
Sure, I will do my very best to stay awake for the next 2 minutes and deliver these final comments. Thanks a lot for all of the intellectual density I received this evening. Rem, you always put on a good show. So just very quickly, again, back to sort of what I do outside of my conventional investment, large-scale stuff from the fund side in the educational space, which is much more of a venture position. Currently advising a business called NetSchola, NETSCHOLA, which is a fledgling educational company, technology company, trying to leverage technology to bring education from the UK and other more developed curricula into Africa, the Caribbean, Latin America. I'm sitting in Nairobi. I've lived here for 12 years. I used to live in London, used to live in New York. I'm glad I'm not there during the UNGA week. And from an African perspective, though we've seen some centers on the ground where teams are using AI to train people, actually more likely train LLMs to recognize images, recognize some text, recognize local languages. Africa doesn't really feature in the conversation when it comes to AI as much as it would do over time. And this is a shame because of the demographics, right? We have the youngest sort of global population, rapid amounts of urbanization and penetration of fiber and that sort of thing. And we know that the young people here are some of the fastest adopters of technology in the world. And so, there is a certain gap there, which we think budgets will start to cover once initial sort of strides are made in the West in AI, but there's still a lot to do here. Technology adoption, I don't need to tell you guys that phones are people's wallets, banks, entertainment systems, classrooms, educational and sort of communication tools, right? It all sort of happens here in a very digital sphere. So their AI opportunity is great. But I got a quick case study for you on this sort of training revolution. There's a business here called ALX. I'm not sure if you've come across them, the gentleman from Wharton. ALX is an educational business here funded by the MasterCard Foundation. They got a few $100 million in 2021 to start to train kids in Africa to code and prepare them for the global coding avalanche of skills needed that was coming. Then you saw access to LLMs and ChatGPT and all sorts of other AI tools come up in 2022-23, and a lot of that money essentially has gone to waste because the initial layer of kids that were being trained, all of a sudden those jobs are being replaced by some fairly smart AI outsourcing. So you think about training, this wall that immediately got hit. Shows us that things are changing very quickly and in front of our very eyes. So very quickly, that same business has taken the other $200 and whatever million that were left, is pivoting towards training kids in Africa to be able to curate AI functions within businesses and using them as an outsourced business process unit. And so retraining we're seeing happening at a very, very rapid rate here. And these are, if I look at the cohorts that are coming through these through this business, everything from a 16-year-old who's got the independence to go and sort of learn how to code and put himself into this program, to people who already have jobs and who are mid-career, early career, 25 to 35, deciding that, you know, being an accountant's not for me, I'd rather do something else that's more interesting and I can get the skills digitally. AI is a huge enabler of the turnaround and the opportunity, and bridging the frontier and emerging markets with the opportunity internationally. And you know, speaking to Tim's work, we'd like to see that push a little bit further down into enabling us in the K-12 region, because to prepare the kids to be able to actually absorb these skills and want to go and train for these skills, all the work starts down there. And there are a few different startups who are focused on this space. And I also advise a small fund, the Future Education Fund in Africa, which is focused purely on tech, increasingly doing more AI in supporting that space. Taking us back to the question just before everyone falls asleep, when it comes to Africa, I think the retraining premise has some challenges. I think for us, we're not really retraining the broader workforce. I think we've got demographics that lead to us actually training the workforce as is. You know, visas coming into Africa with a few $1 billion of investment because it's the first continent where credit card penetration was 1%. Here, right? They're going straight to selling digital financial products into phones and into computers and online, and totally ignoring a whole part of, you know, the credit card generation, which essentially dominated the West since the 80s. That's now all gone. We're immediately going to the digital here, and we hope we can see the same sort of dynamic in AI. And new AI-powered tools could be a game changer for crucial industries like agriculture, which is still a large employer in Africa, and less efficient than in other regions, crop yields and the like. You know, whether it's AI sensors to make farming more efficient, or tools to track the provenance of certain goods and payments, etc., we think AI is going to be a massive kicker and efficiency increase on the continent. Where we're currently investing, I think, is in a lot of the businesses that are seeing the beginning of this trend, but actually tying it to the Western trends that have moved first, because we see the adoption here basically essentially following the international trends, although the opportunity we think is just as big. I'll leave it there for now with my comments. Can sort of drop my contact details and anyone can reach out if they want to discuss anything on the continent. Happy to help the collective group here doing any thinking that relates to Africa, Latin America or Caribbean, to sort of, you know, to support your work. Happy to you know, lean in on that regard. Thank you, Rim. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. I look at Pavel. I don't think we have time for discussion with the audience, unfortunately, because we are quite late. So I would like to thank Michael, Tim, Cinzia, Marta, and Funsho for joining from Europe and from Barcelona, Brussels, and Nairobi. Then you can, you know, have a good night. And we will continue the day. I'm jet-lagged because I arrived yesterday, so I'm not functioning properly either. So thank you all. It was a very interesting discussion. We'll continue on this brain skills part. Certainly, we will have event to really delve further into this interconnection between what we do as economists and the neuroscience aspect. I think there is a lot to be done, and I'm very happy that brain skills is taking a lot of position in this conference, and then we will continue working together on this. Thank you very much, and I'll see you soon back to Europe.
Bye. Bye.